pushing back against aging. And throughout the series, we've kind of had a common theme of what can we talk about? What can we do to push back against aging? We can't stop it. There's no magical pill yet. You know, when I find it, believe me, I'll tell all of you. But for now, we want to just focus on doing everything we possibly can to push back against it. And tonight's topic is something that, you know, 15, 20 years ago wasn't really something even in my radar. And now I kind of specialize in diets for cognitive health and working with people with brain fog issues and memory and dementia. So I'm excited to share with you my knowledge. And we're going to start by just recapping what is aging. Aging is the impact of accumulation of lots of different molecular and cellular damage over time. So I love this image of this apple where you can see one side has been preserved well and the other side has been oxidized. There's a lot of damage, it browns, it starts to rot. In a way, that's kind of what happens to us if we don't do enough things to kind of protect ourselves against that. That leads to a decrease in both physical and mental capacity, and then an increased risk for chronic disease. There are many things that accelerate aging: lack of exercise, poor sleep, toxins. We talked in this series in other webinars on the impact of blood sugar and weight. We talked about diet and inflammation. I'm going to continue talking about some of those in our topic tonight, which is brain fog, memory, and cognitive health. So what I want to talk about is, you know, as we get older, there are changes that happen to us, both physically, mentally, as I mentioned, and changes occur in all parts of us, including the brain. Certain parts of the brain actually start to shrink, and in certain regions, communication between the neurons, those brain cells, can be reduced. We also have an increased risk for neurodegenerative diseases. I would say Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are probably the most common. There's others: Huntington's disease, multiple sclerosis. You know, currently about 5 million Americans suffer from Alzheimer's disease, and that number is really projected to almost triple by 2050. So these are very big concerns, and a lot of families are affected by this. But even if your family is not, even if you're not someone that has Parkinson's or Alzheimer's in the family, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods, and it doesn't mean that you may not deal with a cognitive health issue. There are other issues like just mild cognitive impairment or brain fog, that kind of feeling where, you know, your brain's kind of in a cloud. You're not as sharp as you once were. You're kind of feeling like you can't find the words that you wanted to, or names are becoming difficult. Attention and focus issues. You're having trouble being as productive as you once were. You can't pay attention as long. It's taking you longer to problem solve, or you may have mood issues. So this doesn't have to be a thing of, well, you know, Alzheimer's isn't in my family, I don't have it, I'm not going to pay attention to it. We should be paying attention to everything and preventing things, because 20 years before Alzheimer's is diagnosed, people can be having symptoms, or people can be having the beginnings of it even before they see symptoms. So these are issues that you want to start doing something about sooner than later, even before it is an actual problem. Blood flow to the brain can be affected. Inflammation is certainly a part of why we have cognitive loss. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to really push back and keep our brains as optimal as possible. Again, don't wait. There's this preclinical phase, this silent phase, where you're having brain changes without measurable symptoms. And that's a scary thing to think about, but the same is true for if you think about heart disease, if you think about diabetes. It's not just like, boom, it happens. It's years and years and years of things that we are doing, and genetics playing a role too, that really leads to these problems. So the ideal is to have that just normal aging for the brain at the top, where it's just a slight decrease. You might be a little bit slower to recall, maybe can't learn as quickly, but you're not having significant cognitive impairments like with mild cognitive impairment or dementia, where it's really affecting your life to the point where you can't even live on your own. So let's push back against it. Let's do everything we can. Tonight, there's a lot of things I could focus on. It was hard to narrow this down to kind of fit into the hour, but of course, diet, I'm going to talk about as a dietitian. That's my main deal. So I'm going to focus on diet and different types of diets, sleep, supplements, and exercise as well, and how we could utilize those to push back against brain aging. So let's start with diet. Nutrition for a better brain. I would say, just generally speaking, everyone always asks, what's the best diet? What's the best diet? My answer is always like, I don't know. It depends on who you are, what you like to eat, what your labs look like, what your family history is. But really, if I had to pick just one, the Mediterranean diet is probably one of the most studied and one of the best diets for really everyone. It emphasizes real foods. That's the number one takeaway that I can have for anyone that's looking to better their nutrition, is get back to real foods, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, really healthy fats, whole grains versus a refined grain. Processed foods and sugar should be limited or eliminated as much as possible. And that's really allowing then inflammation to decrease, blood sugar to decrease, oxidative stress to decrease, and all of those things impair the brain. You're making sure you're adequately hydrated, because even a 2% dehydration can cause issues with brain health. I can't tell you how many people I see that I read their diet records and it's like 16 ounces of water a day, maybe 3 glasses of water, 4 glasses of water a day. And they have cognitive issues, and that's in part because they're so dehydrated. So one of the biggest things you can do is drink more water and follow a Mediterranean diet. This is kind of just giving an example of what that might look like. Eggs, oatmeal, blueberries, green tea, again, those healthy fats like avocados, whole grain pastas, hummus and vegetables, salads, wild fish, olives, even dark chocolate, berries, which are very nutritious. So all of these foods are feeding the brain. If you are eating a standard American diet and you expect your body and your brain to function optimally, I don't understand how that could be, because you're not putting in the fuel and the materials, in a way, like giving it that information that it needs, the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, all of the fuel that it needs to function. So it's always interesting to me when someone expects, like, I want a pill or I want something really quick, but I'm not changing my diet. I'm not changing the very thing that is quite possibly impacting your brain the most. Another nutrition strategy for better brain health is a ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is a high fat, but very low carb eating style. So different than an Atkins or a typical low carb diet, in that you're not emphasizing protein. It's not like, Atkins is like a huge steak and then, a little bit of non-starchy veggies. A ketogenic diet is like a lot of fat, and then some non-starchy veggies and more fat, and then a little bit of protein. So you're not overdoing it, but it's quite a different lifestyle. It certainly goes against cultural norms. It's very restrictive. However, it is a therapeutic diet that I see amazing changes with. Pretty incredible changes, where people are noticing, if you have brain fog, if you're having memory issues, a ketogenic diet, if you're already eating well, not someone that's maybe eating a standard American diet, a lot of crackers and cookies and cereals and starches, but if you're eating more of a Mediterranean diet already, and you want to see if you can have even better cognitive health, or maybe you're dealing with brain fog and just low energy, a ketogenic diet can be a very incredible thing to try. Doesn't have to be long term. I would say maybe 2 months to see how you react to it. It's something that if you have real high cholesterol levels, you definitely want to be in touch with a doctor just to make sure that levels don't go up. They don't always. In fact, sometimes cholesterol levels go down. So I'm not saying that just because you go on a high fat diet, it means those numbers will skyrocket. It's just something you want to pay attention to. If you're someone that has a lot of blood sugar issues, work with your doctor because you'd want to like ease into something like this. It could be amazing. And I've gotten people off of medications on a ketogenic diet just by changing from a regular diet into ketogenic. So it's pretty incredible. And one caution though, I would say is, I've seen a lot of different versions of ketogenic diets and many of them emphasize dairy. I'm not a dietitian that's going to say, hey, go grab a stick of cream cheese, wrap it in bacon, now you're keto, right? I think that dairy should also be limited. It should not be a staple part of a ketogenic diet. It's, cheese is amazingly delicious. People love it. It's easy to add as a snack, but it's not something that really, from a brain perspective, should be part of a healthy anti-inflammatory ketogenic diet, which is what I try to focus on. So nuts and seeds, wild fish, avocados, olive oil, those are the types of fats. Coconut oil or MCT oil. Those are all amazing fats that should make up a big part of the diet. And then, of course, non-starchy vegetables. So your kale and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and all of those non-starchy veggies should be the other part of it so that you make sure you're still getting in those good nutrients along with the fats. When you do this kind of eating style, you switch from your body running off of glucose, which is sugar, to tapping into fats. And that's what ketosis is. It's your body using ketone bodies or fats to fuel rather than sugars. And that type of fuel is a cleaner energy source. So I always think of it like the difference between an electric car and then a regular gas run car. When you think about, putting gas in and it smells and it's got pollution and you see those trucks with all the smoke versus an electric vehicle that you don't have any of that. It's more efficient. That's kind of how a ketogenic diet, fueling your body with fat, can be better for the brain. So just something to think about and something to maybe experiment with. But again, caution against too much dairy. You want to be careful with that. Another thing that can be really powerful for using nutrition, I guess not using nutrition to help the brain, is abstaining from eating for a period of time. That's called fasting. Lots of different types of fasts out there, lots of different ways you could do it. There's intermittent fasting, which is what I do because it's the easiest. And I don't know about you, but the second someone tells me don't eat, I'm immediately thinking about food and want to eat something. So I use intermittent fasting and I do it overnight. So I'm giving myself, 14 hours, 16 hours sometimes of not eating, but the bulk of that is overnight while I'm sleeping. So you could just stop eating a few hours before you wake up and then stop, don't eat breakfast until an hour or two after you wake up. So if you, have dinner at 6, go to bed at 8, and you eat your breakfast around 9 or 10, right there, you've just built in a great fasting period without really having to do much work. I also love intermittent fasting just because at the nighttime eating tends to be when people eat more snack, sugary type foods. And those are foods that are bad for the brain, cause a lot of damage, cause a lot of inflammation, and really fuel aging. So that's another thing, another benefit of fasting is you get away from that pocket of time when I feel like most of us are so susceptible to like reaching for more snack type, goodie type foods. One of the best things about fasting is that it increases something called autophagy. Autophagy is basically a self-cleaning kind of situation where the body is now in a mode where it is starting to eat the dead, the debris, the old tissue and generating new. So it is amazingly therapeutic. There is tons of research out there showing this type of eating not only is great for the brain, but it increases longevity. So those that practice fasting in their lives, and many people do as part of religion or a spiritual practice, or just, because they're aware of it, people that do that have better cognitive function and then live longer, healthier life. So not just that they're living longer, but they have a better quality life while they're living longer, because who wants to live till 99 if you're miserable and not feeling good and achy all over and you can't do things? When you fast, your body's able to clean up a lot of that debris, decrease inflammation, and it can be an amazingly therapeutic thing for the brain. I am someone, just a personal story, that I used to eat up until bedtime. I was just always hungry, and I'm, then I try exercise a lot. So it was never like a concern weight wise, but I realized like I wasn't sleeping as well. I was starving again first thing in the morning, just kind of like foggy brained. And I started doing fasting. And like I said, the only way I can do it is like that nighttime to kind of pushing my breakfast. And it was pretty immediate, the benefits I saw. I feel like I'm more productive. Like I wake up and I can immediately get the day started and get going into work. And I feel like that's one of my most productive times, where it used to be rolling out of bed, got to wake up for a little while and kind of get into things. So, certainly with any sort of new diet or fast, always check with your doctor if you're on certain medications, if you're underweight, if you have blood sugar issues or you're on blood sugar medication. You definitely want a healthcare practitioner involved. But for most people, that intermittent fasting overnight, where it's like 12 to 16 hours, that can be an amazing strategy to help with brain health and mental clarity and longevity. So who wouldn't want to live a longer, healthier life? Those that do fast, just another specific for the brain, have less plaque buildup in their brains, they found. And it increases a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is something they find low levels of in those with dementia and Alzheimer's and other brain issues. We want to boost that protein as much as possible. There's some other things we can do to boost BDNF that we're going to talk about throughout the talk as well. But it's a great thing. I also forgot to mention in the beginning, because this is Zoom, you have a chat and a Q&A feature. You are more than welcome. I can't hear you or see you, so you are more than welcome to use the Q&A and the chat feature so that I can see questions as you go along. Feel free to type those in. If you have a comment on anything, please feel free to type those in as well, and I'll look at those throughout the talk. So that's nutrition. That's how we can use nutrition. Mediterranean type diets, ketogenic diets, and fasting, some of the most therapeutic nutrition strategies that we can do for the brain. So what if there was something that could improve your mood, grow new brain cells, decrease your risk of cognitive decline, improve your memory, improve your overall health, and improve balance, and it's free, and it doesn't have side effects? Would you do it? So take a minute and think to yourself, if something could do all, if I said there was a pill that could do all of those things, would you take it? Most people would be sitting there going, yeah, duh, like, of course I would be doing this. Why wouldn't I? It's because the thing is exercise. Exercise is really the big thing that does all of those that I had just mentioned. So I hate saying the E word because I feel like it has a somewhat negative connotation to it, where people hear that and they roll their eyes, or they're thinking, oh, I don't feel like it. I'm so tired. I don't have time to do this. But there are not many things that are more therapeutic. I could bottle up all the benefits of exercise and put it in a pill. It would be the best-selling pill in the world. That's how therapeutic exercise is. But it's not just activity. Again, I talk to a lot of people and they say, I'm very active. I garden, I do housework, I go for a walk, I walk my dogs. But you've got to be doing it to a point where you're out of breath. It should be difficult to carry out a conversation as you exercise. And that level might be different. What it takes to get to that point will look different for different people. Someone, that's really athletic may need to be doing like uphill sprints to get to that level, whereas another person just moving their arms a little bit as they walk and speeding up on a flat surface might be enough for them to get to that out of breath, kind of difficult to talk situation. So whatever it takes for you, and just keep growing on that. Do it most days a week, at least 150 minutes to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity. So that's walking quickly, that's bike riding, that could be swimming if you have bad joints. You could do chair workouts. There are so many tools and resources now because of the internet. There are DVDs you could rent from the library. So it's, to me, it's just like a no-brainer, no pun intended. Like, why wouldn't you be doing more exercise? It is so, so, so beneficial. And there is also another type of exercise. So we want to do like cardio. We want to do some strength training, right? We're preserving our muscle. Think of this as a brain workout, getting the heart rate up. It's increasing blood flow and oxygen to the brain. But another thing you can do is you can combine a mental and a physical task and get even better results. And this is a trick that we use because it is when you're increasing blood flow and oxygen and you're actively working your brain, you have even better cognitive improvements. It helps to generate more brain cells. It helps to maintain them more than if you were to do, a mental task and a physical task separately. So this is called dual tasking, and it's just the act of combining something that involves brain work with physical effort. You can do think about math problems while you jog. You can listen to a podcast that's like helping you learn something, not just any old podcast, but something that's more instructional while you're riding your bike. One fun thing is you could either do this by jogging, around a block, or doing a lap in the pool, and you think of as many words as you can that start with the letter A. And then after that lap, you move to letter B. And so you're constantly thinking of all these things and actively engaging your brain as you're working up a sweat, as you're increasing that blood flow to the brain. And it's so incredible how many, especially like older folks, how much they improve when you do something like just combining a physical and a mental task. So I really encourage everyone. It's a fun thing too. Like you can, if you have a partner, if you have someone that could do this with you, you can make a game out of it. You could have a ball and you could pass it back and forth and try to name the state capitals, or you can balance on one leg. Anything you can that just combines the two is gonna make a bigger difference than if you're just plain old exercising on your own. So you could still do plain exercise. You can still, do as much as you can, but then a couple days a week, try to engage the brain as you're doing your workout and just see if you have noticeable improvements. Someone is suffering from brain fog or cognitive difficulties and memory issues. This is a fantastic way to get that brain engaged again and really see if they get some results. All right. What about sleep? So sleep is something that so many people really have a hard time doing. And I know that sounds silly to say, but I would say in my time at the store, it's one of the most popular things that people come into the store for. What do you have for sleep? Either because they're not sleeping long enough or because they're not getting a good quality sleep. And when you don't get good sleep, you feel it. The next day, it's pretty instant. Poor memory, you're more irritable, anxious. You actually have a decreased reaction time. I know they've done studies of people when they are tired versus drunk, and it's like the same thing. If you're driving while you're tired, it's like you're driving while you're drunk because your reaction time is that delayed. You're actually less productive if you don't get good quality sleep or enough sleep. You have less motivation. Your resilience to stress decreases. And that's not something I included in this talk to get really deep into stress, just because I was afraid I wouldn't have time. But it really affects everything when you're stressed. When you have that cortisol, that stress hormone, that increases blood pressure, that can cause attention issues, that can make you crash. It can just cause a lot of irritation and irritability. When we're not sleeping well enough, our ability to deal with stress, and it really decreases, and we're more susceptible to the ravaging effects of chronic stress, which are detrimental to us. So I won't get too much deeper into the impact of stress, but that is another thing that affects aging, and certainly can affect the brain aging as well. So you may not be getting enough sleep, and you kind of know that. Oh, I only got 5 hours. I only got, 4 hours of sleep. I was up late, that, this came up, or maybe you just wake up a lot during the night. And then there's that poor quality sleep. And that's something that I want to get a little deeper into, something called sleep apnea. And this is something that, the doctor that I work with, I hear him daily, multiple times a day, really kind of shouting this from the rooftops, because when you have sleep apnea, basically you are not getting enough oxygen to the brain. So it's moments while you're sleeping where you actually stop breathing, or you're not taking in adequate oxygen. So then your brain is suffering. It's like getting little bits of brain damage throughout the night. So when you think of it that way, when I hear it as nightly brain damage, you want to act on it, right? The problem is most people think that you have to snore. You have to be someone that's like ringing the chandelier, kind of a snoring. You don't have to snore to have sleep apnea. You can just have, and you don't necessarily have to be overweight to have sleep apnea either. It's important to think about, if you're someone that feels like you're going to bed, it's like at 10, you're not waking up till 8, but you still feel like you're not rested. Or maybe you have a partner that sleeps with you and they notice like your breathing stops, or you're real restless. It may be worth it to get a sleep study, and in a sleep lab, depending on what your insurance is. It's not something that is on everyone's radar or that we even think about, but it can be so beneficial to see just how good your sleep quality is, and if you are suffering from sleep apnea. Because if you are, we've got to stop that brain damage from happening every night, especially in a time when it should be very restorative and healing for the brain. You're missing out on that kind of toxic cleanup that happens overnight. And that's so important, because the last thing we need our brain to have is a buildup of toxins. So we really want to make sure sleep is good quality and is long enough. How can you better your sleep? There's a lot of things you can do. But a couple strategies is stop eating a couple hours before bed. This works perfectly if you are engaging in like an intermittent fast. But even if not, try not to eat right up until bedtime, because it has a blood sugar effect. It can interfere with sleep. You might wake up more, just may not get as good of a quality of sleep. If you're sitting there thinking, I have to, like I'm someone that has to eat, then make sure it's more of a protein rich type of a snack, something lighter, not a real heavy carb rich, you don't want to be eating bags of chips basically before, or brownie or something like that. You want to be as active as you can during the day. See, these things all tie in together. Exercise not only helps the brain, it helps you sleep, but not near bedtime. For most people, if they're exercising or if they're real stimulated or active in the evening, that can impair sleep. So make sure you have your exercise earlier in a day, but you definitely want to be moving enough so that you get kind of worn out. Avoid alcohol before bed. This is one that I know can be surprising to people, because they think, no, that glass of wine really knocks me out, or I love my drink, before bed. And alcohol may initially help you fall asleep, but it interrupts your sleep and it causes more of a poor quality sleep a couple hours in. So it's really backfiring. You might be going to bed sooner because of it, but you're not getting as good quality, and it can really affect that. Have a caffeine cutoff time. This differs for every person. My mom is someone that's notorious. She's got a 3 o'clock cutoff, and if she has well, some people can do it a little later, but sometimes people, it takes 12 hours for really that morning cup of coffee to get out of their system. So, play around with it. That could be something that's really inhibiting your sleep. Practice deep breathing. You can do techniques like box breathing, which is where this is my favorite thing to do at night. I'll either do box breathing or something called 4-7-8. But the box breathing is you basically pick a number. So most people are comfortable starting with 4 or 5, and you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it out for 4 seconds. And you repeat that like 4 or 5, 6 times, as many times as you can. The counting helps to redirect your mind. So if you're someone that gets anxious at night and you're thinking, your mind's going that like tired but wired state, box breathing is great because now you're counting and then the breathing is slower. And you kind of, the better you get at this, the higher the number gets. So, with practice, you may be able to hit, an 8 or a 9 second or whatever. I'm sure there are people in this world that I've heard of that, do it like once a minute. I'm not there yet, but, for me, it's like, usually around 6 or 7, and it just kind of slows everything down and really puts me more in a place of I'm like ready to sleep. I'm kind of calmed down mentally. I've been able to kind of calm down too. So that's a great thing. It's free. You can do it during the day as well. You're in the car, someone cuts you off, you get angry, do some deep breathing, help to kind of calm yourself down and stay away from that kind of up and down pattern that happens with stress. You want to avoid blue lights before bed, dim lights, like a couple hours before you go to sleep. So your body starts like getting in this idea of, okay, now it's getting darker. That's when melatonin gets produced. And then get sun before 1. I don't know if you've ever heard that. No wine after 9 and get sun before 1. The reason is because when you're exposed to sunlight, it awakens and kind of dims the different hormones. So melatonin production kind of shuts down and other wakeful hormones get amplified. And then the reverse happens in the evening as you start to dim lights and as you start to reduce your exposure to screens and things like that, you're really able to produce the correct hormones and kind of get in this cycle of good sleep. And then, of course, like I mentioned, see a sleep doctor, get a sleep study done if you are having struggles, because that can tell you a lot about how your sleep quality is affecting your health and your brain as well. All right. What about supplements? And I apologize, that picture is very blurry. I didn't realize that. Lots of really good supplements that you can take to help to support good brain health. One of the foundation supplements that I really think, I always look at supplements to fill in gaps of the diet. So where are we missing most in our diet? Omega-3s are a big thing for people. If you are not eating wild fish 2-3 times a week, and you haven't been doing that regularly throughout your life, I'm willing to bet you're deficient in omega-3 fatty acids because our bodies can't make them. So if you're not eating one of the best sources, which are omega-3s from wild fish, like salmon or sardines, you're probably not making enough. There are vegetarian sources, so like hemp seeds and flax seeds and chia seeds and certain nuts like almonds and walnuts, but it's not quite the same. Our bodies need to convert that into something before it gets converted into DHA, DPA, and EPA, which are really the active kinds of omega-3. So I really encourage eating it, but if you can't, if I said fish and you gave me one of these faces, I swear every time I do a talk live and I say fish, I could see on people's faces who likes it and who won't touch the stuff, because the people that like it kind of like sit up real proudly. If you don't like it, that's okay, but probably supplementing is going to be the next best thing. Nordic Naturals, I love that company. They make really good quality, really pure products. And they make this one called Omega Memory with curcumin. Curcumin is on its own. It's from turmeric, which is like the rhizome. It's kind of a spice in your spice cabinet. And this is a specific form that's going to be better absorbed than just what you're typically eating. And that combined with omega-3 really packs an anti-inflammatory kind of powerhouse, and great for joint health as well. Honestly, this is good for the heart. It's good for joints as well as the brain, but omega-3s may promote neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. They also protect our brain cells and they decrease that harmful inflammation. So omegas are amazing. I would encourage you, if you're getting an omega-3 supplement, look for something that says triglyceride form on it. A triglyceride fish oil tends to be better absorbed because it's closer to what we eat than what a lot of companies, sometimes the lower cost companies, if it doesn't say, it's probably not a triglyceride form, because these companies know it's a more expensive process and it's better. So they're going to tell you somewhere easy on the label for you to find. So just know that if you've been taking a fish oil and it doesn't say that, maybe switch it up and see if that's something that doesn't make a bigger difference for you. I see a question pop in. Is it okay to read in bed hoping to get sleepy, or does that keep me awake? That's a good question. I would say it probably depends on what you're reading, because if it's something that's a real suspenseful type of book, that might get you like more stimulated. Where if it's something that's kind of, you know, dull or something that just is not real exciting, there's not a lot of suspense in it, that's probably okay to do. If you're reading it on a device though, I would avoid that, because again, it's that blue screen. I just invested in, and it wasn't a big investment, I think they were like $20, but I got me some blue blockers finally, that I wear to work now during the day. And I just started yesterday, and I'm just curious to see if wearing those all day will help with sleep quality and help with headaches and things like that. So I think that's more important, but reading should be okay, especially if it's an old-fashioned book that you're not looking at a screen, it's just the pages. Okay. Another great yet missing element in our diet is magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that we just don't seem to be getting enough of. There are many, many different kinds of magnesium that you can supplement with. There's magnesium oxide, which is honestly more of a laxative. There's magnesium glycinate, which I like because it doesn't tend to cause stomach issues, and it's just more of like an overall form of magnesium. But when we're talking about magnesium for the brain, this form, magnesium L-threonate, is a specific form that crosses the blood-brain barrier and really helps to increase brain levels of magnesium. And magnesium has been shown to like calm, so it's really good. I like to take it if someone's doing MagMind or a magnesium L-threonate. Typically the dose is 3 pills, and I will have them take all 3 at night. So like right before bed, or, you know, in the evening when you're kind of calming down, it's a great time to take that. It may help your sleep, but then because it's giving you magnesium, you may also have improved learning and memory. Magnesium actually enhances connection between brain cells. It can slow brain aging. So it is an amazing, amazing mineral for the brain. Most vitamins and minerals are important for brain health, so it's important to know if you're deficient, but especially MagMind, we see some pretty cool changes in people when they take that in the evening. Even people that have like a more serious form of cognitive issue, like an Alzheimer's, where we, you know, obviously their memory doesn't come back, but we see changes in behavior where they are calmer, they're less aggressive, they are more agreeable, they feel like they're happier. And so that's kind of an interesting thing too with magnesium. There are some complexes out there. Garden of Life makes these 2 doctor formulated brain health products. One is called Memory and Focus for Adults. And the other one is memory and focus for young adults. Please do not let the names impact which one you go with, because you can be 65 and take the young adult if it's needed. Kind of the star ingredient in memory and focus is coffee berry. Coffee berry is the fruit of the coffee bean. So before they get the bean out of it to roast, there's a red fruit around it, and it is really high in antioxidants, and more than blueberries. And it's clinically shown to increase BDNF. So BDNF, again, is that protein in the brain that prevents neurodegeneration. So that breakdown in brain cells, those neurons. It can help create new neurons, which is so important when we're talking about brain health. And higher levels seem to translate to less shrinking, especially of areas like the hippocampus. So people are having better recall, ability to learn new things, helps the brain to grow new neurons, build new pathways, that kind of a thing. So really good products as well. The difference between the two is that the memory and focus for adults is a stronger kind of like overall antioxidant. It has they both have the same amount of coffee berry, but the one for adults also has this neurophenol blend, which is a higher antioxidant blend. The young adult has this dual sage extract, and that actually has been shown to promote like focus and memory, and also like calmness. So I honestly, depending on what a person tells me, if they're saying like, oh, I've got dementia in my family, I just want to protect my brain health, see if I can get any benefit cognitively, memory and focus for adults 50 plus would probably be better. But the young adult is if someone's in that mode where they're stressed or they're like, feel like they're unfocused, that would be the memory and focus for young adults, because of that sage extract that's in there that really helps with like clearer thinking during stressful times. I really like that one for that. Takes a while. Any of these supplements, I should say, you know, these are not things that you're going to take and it's like, boom, I notice a difference. You want to give these at least a month, if not 2 months. And the great thing about Vital Choice is there's a 2-month return policy. So you can go through a full bottle, and if it doesn't help, you know, at least you've given it long enough to really see a difference. Most people don't have any problems with the ingredients as far as side effects or anything like that. So they're usually well tolerated because they're whole food products. They also have some turmeric in there and a little bit of vitamin D, a lipid blend. So I think that's in the adult 50 plus one. So really nice blends of products and really good high antioxidants to help protect the brain. And then last but not least, one of my favorites, I'm a huge fan of medicinal mushrooms. They have helped my asthma. They've helped so many things, immune system. But this particular mushroom called lion's mane, and it gets its name because it's kind of, you can see on the right, the picture on the right, it's like this white mushroom that has all these little pieces to it that looks like a lion's mane. Really the star for brain health. It's also good for nerve health too. So if someone has neuropathy or other nerve issues, lion's mane has been shown to promote neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells, and nerve regeneration. Again, it takes time. Typically, you want to do at least 2,000 milligrams a day for several months if it's a nerve issue. Nerve issues are tough. When we're talking about regeneration, that takes a long time. So but it's a very healthful thing. It's a food. So unless someone has like a mushroom allergy or something, usually it's incredibly well tolerated. It can increase that BDNF, that magical protein I keep talking about, and really support cognitive function. I have had personal experience with lion's mane mushroom. I took the Mycobotanicals brain formula years and years and years ago. Before I was a dietitian, and when I was studying for an exam, I just wanted to give myself all the edge I could. And after it, I stopped taking it. I figured, okay, great, it's over, I passed, it's wonderful. I noticed such a big difference when I stopped it that I got back on it. And it's something that's so beneficial for anyone that has issues with focus, memory, or just want to do something for long-term brain health. The mycobotanicals brain and then the Vital Choice brain mushroom support are complexes. So they have lion's mane mushroom, but then they have ginkgo biloba and bacopa in there and other ingredients in there that also support mental clarity. Ginkgo actually helps with blood flow to the brain. Bacopa is great for mental clarity. So those are more complexes. And if someone doesn't want to take, too many things, they just want to start with lion's mane mushroom, you can see you can get that on its own. And again, take it with or without food. It's really easy on the system. In fact, you're probably not going to notice you're taking anything for a few weeks, but it can be one that people come back and say, I noticed a difference with this. Any of the three are great. The two on the right are complexes. Lion's mane on its own. So we talked about a lot. We talked about diet. So there's ketogenic diets, there's Mediterranean diets, there's fasting. We talked about bettering sleep and making sure, paying attention to adequate sleep. I know a lot of people wear those devices at night. Those are okay, but they're really going more on motion than anything. So a full sleep study may be needed for someone that really is struggling. And then making sure you're doing some supplementing and some things that you can do to kind of boost brain health. And of course, exercise. That is probably, out of anything, something that people will notice from most profoundly is when they start getting in a place where they're exercising regularly and exercising at a level where you feel like you're sweating, your heart rate's up, you're out of breath, and it's hard to hold a conversation. And I always repeat that because I can't tell you the amount of people that say I exercise and they're just kind of strolling around the block, I talk on my phone to my friend, then that doesn't count. We've got to up the intensity a little bit. You can carry water bottles with you as weights or put sell those little leg weights, anything you can do, take a different route, go uphill. Something you can do to kind of bump up that activity. And while you're doing that, do some mental math games, do something that's working the brain as you're working out. And all of those things are amazing for decreasing your risk for cognitive issues, helping to sharpen your brain and decrease brain fog right now. So at this point, I am happy to take questions. I left some time at the end. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I see someone asking, is tuna good for you? Yes and no. Tuna is a great protein and it does have some good fats, especially if you get a brand like Wild Planet or something that it's been wild caught and it's usually has lower mercury levels. However, tuna is just a high in mercury fish. So even if you get something that's lower, it still has mercury, and heavy metals are detrimental for the brain. So no more than once a month if you're doing tuna. Something like salmon, sardines, anchovies, herring, those are going to be much better for you from a lower mercury, higher omega-3 content. And if you can get wild caught because what the fish are eating, then you'll eat, and you want to make sure they've been able to develop those good omegas versus a farm raised, which they usually end up injecting food coloring into and all sorts of fun things to get it to look really nice, but it's not the same. So thank you for that question. I think tuna is a good protein, but probably not something you want to have that often just because of the mercury that's in there. All right. Any other questions? You guys are a quiet group tonight. I see another one pop in. How much fat is needed for a ketogenic diet? So when we talk about ketogenic diets, it's a pretty significant amount of fat. So let me go back in my, just want to go back through and show you that screen again. So we're talking like 75 to 100 grams of protein, which is, maybe like an egg, handful of nuts and seeds, a 4-ounce piece of fish, and then a 4-ounce piece of chicken for dinner. So protein is pretty normal. Fat, you'll see 155 to 166 grams of fat. So it's multiple teaspoons or tablespoons, I should say, of fat, to the point where you have to go out of your way. I usually encourage people to start with some MCT oil in the morning, like you can put it in your coffee or your tea. Then I'll have them do a something that's like nut and seed rich, or that's got eggs and avocados. And then into lunch, have a big salad, throw some pumpkin seeds on there, and like load it up with olive oil and some sort of like, you know, lemon juice or apple cider vinegar or something. And then you get into the evening and you'd want to make sure that you're having something like mashed cauliflower. So instead of a potato that's heavier carb, now we're using cauliflower that's lower carb, but you can still use ghee, which is clarified butter, or olive oil or avocado oil in there. And now we've got a nice fatty, you know, kind of cauliflower mash. You have your salmon with it. You have a big thing of spinach and asparagus, and you can drizzle olive oil on top. So it's definitely a different lifestyle for sure. It's really a more restrictive thing, but I encourage people to try it for just like 2 months. Even a month, many people notice, but you've got to be strict. Alcohol really isn't, it's that alcohol is something that's going to take you right out of ketosis. So you want to give yourself at least a month of really getting into that low carb state, and you'll know it. People have a noticeable difference mentally when they do that. Is organic food really necessary for good brain health? Yeah, I mean, I think it is, but it doesn't all have to be organic. So I don't know if you're familiar with that Dirty Dozen list, which is the Environmental Working Group each year puts out a Dirty Dozen list. And that's something that you can use to kind of help determine what is most important to be organic versus not. So this is one, I'm going to share my screen again with you. This is this year, the 2021, they finally came out with the new list. I will tell you, strawberries and spinach are always on the top. Most leafy greens, now they have kale, collard greens, and mustard greens as well, because anytime you're doing a green, if it's not organic, there's a higher pesticide level and it gets sprayed after. So be careful with those. The berries, grapes, apples, pears, peaches, cherries. I know it's cherry season and peach season right now. So if you can get them at like a local market, I know Allison Superfoods has a lot of organic fruits there. Somewhere like a Heinen's or a Whole Foods, of course, should have options there. But I've even seen it like a Giant Eagle and Walmart, some good organic produce there. So it shouldn't be too hard to find. But these are especially important. When we talk about brain health, toxins can really affect the brain at a pretty profound level. So it's not my first step. If someone's not eating any vegetables or fruits that are good for the brain, that's where I start before I even talk about organic. But if someone's already doing that stuff and we can tweak it and get as many organic things in there as possible, I think that's important. So I hope that answers that question. It's not necessary in the sense that you have to be 100% organic, but there are certain foods that are better than others and more important to be organic than others. And I use that list. I try not to do any dairy, but if I do dairy or a butter or something, I make sure it's like an Irish or organic version of that to make sure that it has some omega. Same thing with eggs. A grass-fed beef is going to be anti-inflammatory versus a conventional beef that's fed corn and who knows what else. So what our food is, what's being done to our food really does translate in the nutrition that it gives us. I have another question. How good or bad is wild caught freshwater fish, specifically Lake Erie walleye and salmon? I don't know Lake Erie walleye enough to comment on like levels of contaminants. I know that lake is not especially known for being that clean. So I would say if you do have that type of fish, then just don't have it as often. Certainly something like a coho or a Alaskan sockeye salmon, that's going to be something that's more known to be higher omega, lower contaminant level. So it just depends on the waters that these fish were in. And I don't know enough about like Lake Erie walleye to really comment and say if that's something that you should be, you know, eating enough of, if that makes sense. And then last question, it looks like how much omega-3 is necessary. So I always go by potency rather than milligrams, which I know can get confusing. So when you read a label, it's real easy to look at a product like a fish oil and omega-3 and say like, oh, it says 1,000 milligrams, that must be enough. But we want to look at, remember I mentioned that triglyceride form. So what form is something in? The same thing holds true for different vitamins. There are better forms than others. You don't need as much milligram wise or weight wise if it's a better potency, absorb at a better rate. So if it's a triglyceride form of fish oil, sometimes you don't need as much, but I would say at least 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of EPA DHA combination a day if we're really trying to push for good brain health, and ideally that's a triglyceride form. Can you please say again the wild fish you recommend? So I use the acronym SMASH. So sardines, mackerel, anchovies, herring, and salmon. Those are the 5 that you will find on most lists that are talking about brain healthy diets: salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Those are the big ones. That low mercury, really high omegas. All right, everyone. So I don't see any more questions coming in. And I just wanted to say that we, of course, for attending, just a reminder, you will have access to a special savings code that you'll get in your email that will allow you to save an extra 10%. And a lot of those are already on sale. So extra 10% on any of the supplements mentioned tonight, then you'll get that in your email. And tonight's webinar is being recorded and will appear along with all of the other previous recordings at vchoice.com/webinars. So I appreciate everyone for attending. Thank you for your questions, and get out there, get moving, and eat some good healthy fats, get some veggies in, and get some good quality sleep. And think about taking a supplement to fill in some of those gaps. Take care, everyone.